Thank you, Madam President. I rise today to speak in support of my colleague from Iowa's CRA, Congressional Review Act amendment on waters of the United States. West Virginia is no stranger to the crushing consequences of harmful regulations. Our unemployment rate is the highest in the nation. Layoff notices keep coming, and declining revenues from coal severance taxes are eroding our state's budget. I read an article earlier today saying that this far into the fiscal year for the state of West Virginia, we're $91 million in deficit position. The EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers Waters of the U.S. rule, known as the WOTUS rule, is just the latest example of a regulatory environment that threatens to put West Virginians and other Americans out of business. Everyone can agree, and the senator from Texas just talked about this, and I know the senator from Iowa has talked about it frequently, that we must protect our drinking water resources, and we also must protect our precious natural resources. But a rule that subjects puddles and ditches to regulation just goes too far. EPA's unprecedented expansion of federal authority has very serious consequences, both in the state that I represent, West Virginia, but throughout the rest of the country. In my state of West Virginia, the steep mountainous terrain means that EPA would have oversight over any land located in a valley or low-lying area. Well, if you've been to West Virginia, you know you're either on a mountain or you're in a valley in a low-lying area. There is very little flat land. The West Virginia Coal Association pointed out that the WOTUS rule would trigger, quote, an alphabet soup of statutes, regulatory programs, and federal regulatory agencies involved in traditionally non-regulated activities. Something as simple as digging a ditch on a farm or building a home on privately owned property could be under the purview of the EPA, and a failure to comply with that rule could result in fines as high as $37,500 a day. A county commissioner from Monongalia County recently wrote to my office expressing concerns that this WOTUS rule would impede the county's attempt to create developable tracts of land needed to attract large employers in West Virginia. I remind you, developable land in a state like mine is very difficult to create because it's not natural, and it would create a lot of those low-lying areas and ditches and puddles that this regulation goes way beyond to regulate. A small business owner in Scott Depot, West Virginia, shared her concern that small businesses were not adequately considered in the WOTUS rule. I quote, government regulations like the proposed rule are complicated, expensive to navigate, and a real obstacle to my growing business. This change and its ridiculous overreach and restrictions could decrease land value and hinder my ability, her ability as a private landowner, to expand, develop, and use her own private land. We talk a lot about creating jobs in this country. This is a quote from a small business owner who is concerned about her ability to control her own destiny with her own small business, with her own privately owned land. I think this is the reason that 31 states, including West Virginia, are suing to overturn this misguided rule, and 2 courts have already found it likely illegal. Rather than incorporating thoughts from Congress and concerned Americans, this misguided rule doubles down on overreach and threatens to impede small businesses, agriculture, manufacturing, coal, and natural gas production, and many other vital sectors of the economy, as the gentleman from Texas just talked about. The decision by the Sixth Circuit of Appeals to block implementation of the WOTUS rule nationwide confirms that WOTUS was the wrong approach to protecting our water resources and reinforces the need to rein in this administration's unprecedented and overreaching regulations. Along with colleagues on both sides of the aisle, just this morning or just this afternoon at 2:30, I proudly supported Senator Barrasso's Federal Water Quality Protection Act, which would have directed the EPA and the Corps of Engineers to withdraw this rule, go back to the drawing board, and issue an alternative approach that is crafted in consultation with state and local governments and small businesses. The bill we voted on earlier today received bipartisan support from 57 senators, but only partisan opposition. Both Republicans and Democrats supported moving forward on the Federal Water Quality Protection Act because we wanted to offer a real solution that would bring clarity and common sense to the protection of our nation's waters. This legislation would have provided certainty to farmers, manufacturers, energy producers, state and local governments, and anyone seeking to do virtually anything on private land. Unfortunately, 41 Democrats stopped a bipartisan majority from considering this bill. We must now consider other options to block the misguided WOTUS regulation issued by the EPA and the Corps of Engineers. And I'm glad that we will have the opportunity to vote on a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval offered by the senator from Iowa. This resolution would protect hardworking West Virginia families, small businesses, energy producers, and others across the country who would be unfairly burdened by this onerous and deeply flawed WOTUS rule. The WOTUS rule would lead to a massive expansion, again, of costly permitting requirements and hinder our already struggling economy, an outcome West Virginia and the nation simply cannot afford. So I urge my colleagues to join with me and the senator from Iowa who is leading the charge in such an admirable way in supporting this important effort to block the harmful WOTUS rule. And with that, Madam President, I yield the floor.